Keyboard says, what do you think about coal miners not wanting to lose their jobs? Oh, right, okay. Again, I think this goes right back to what I was just saying a second ago, is that I think we all understand, and even a coal miner would probably admit it, as much as they probably wouldn't want to, that we need to move on from coal and get on renewable energy resources. Okay, if you're going to deny climate change and say it doesn't have, you know, coal's fine, coal's clean or whatever, then this conversation clearly ain't for you. But, like, yes, I would want to get us off coal, and yeah, it would be bad for coal miners to lose their job, but, like, the honest argument is to point out that we both want to move on from coal and take care of those people who serve society through doing that particular job, right? That's the bit where these things always seem to fall down. Whenever you hear conversations about it, it's like people are headlocked in this idea of like us versus them. Whereas what we should be fighting for is for, you know, to move on from coal and protect those people that are in an industry that's now getting shut down. Right? But coal miners can't find jobs because they're not qualified, and windmills and such are often expensive and unreliable. Right, and that means we need a change in society where we realise if we're going to just cut people out of the equation, then we need to take care of them, because we're all in this together economically. We're all a society moving together forward in a direction, and it's unfair, I think, to just cut people out of the loop. If you sign up for a specific job or industry, like, you are contributing to society through what that industry, like, its role facilitates. So we needed the energy from coal at one point in time to get from there to here, and so we should be taking care of those people who have contributed to society in that way. Re-education could be difficult. It might not be what everyone wants to do, but surely we can find ways. Usually it comes down to profit margins and, you know, that type of thing stopping workers getting taken care of. That's when it becomes about the individual again, when it's convenient for it to be about the individual. I Love Cats here with Cheers and Bits saying, did you hear about the global climate strike happening right now? People have been talking about Area 51 stuff without even noticing it. I've noticed talk about global climate strike, and I personally support that stuff in some way, but I'm a bit more of an observer to what happens. Like, I'm not sure if I should like I don't really know a lot, like who's organising it, what are they standing for. I just get the gist of the general movement. So I'm along with the gist, maybe not so much the specifics, because I don't know them. But what is alarming to me is that some of this climate strike stuff that's happening, that I've seen and read about, isn't like, people aren't relating to their direct circumstance. It's not like I've lost my job in an unfair way, or my job's in threat, we're going on strike. It's literally like people are so alarmed by the prospect of what's happening through global warming that they, you know, disrupt their own lives to go and protest this stuff. And I think that's crazy. Like, that's a really important sign right there, that it's not even like a direct relationship to anymore. People are far more aware of like the bigger relationship to, let's say, what's going on globally or in the planet or with our weather. I just find it so alarming. I remember seeing this like article about a protester who had glued their hands to a train to stop it from running, and I was like, that is some serious commitment right there. Like, these people are really mean it and are really that worried, and we need to do something now about it. I find that crazy. Not crazy and like they're crazy, just maybe they're right. Maybe we all need to be doing that, you know? My history teacher said the only thing we learned from history is that we learned nothing at all. Thoughts? I honestly think it's kind of right, but kind of not. It's a weird concept. Cookie friend, I always go to this point about absolutism. Whenever you come up with some clever absolute statement about something, it's probably pretty clever to pick it apart, right? Like, there probably are times where we've not learned anything from history, and there are probably plenty of times when we have. The fact that we banned smoking, well, you know, not fully banned, is it? But you know what I mean? Like, we've shifted how we treat smoking. We've shifted what products we put asbestos and lead into. You know, like, clearly we've learned from history in that respect. So I think there's, you know, a lot of interpretation, and pretty much it could go either way for many different things. Like, there's probably times when we haven't, and there's probably times when we had. Wrapping it up into a little statement like that is just, it's always going to have a flaw, I think. Thoughts on nuclear power, says I, Laurie. Not a crazy amount. I listen to lots of podcasts, as you hear me say over and over again. One thing I keep hearing a few different people say is that nuclear energy may have been the bridge to the even better form of energy that we figure out further down the line, right? Is it cold fission or something, making infinite energy out of water? Or anyway, the point I keep hearing these smart people make over and over again is that by us changing our public opinion on nuclear energy, we have stifled its innovation, and today it could be way more safer if we had not stopped working on it. And that's kind of sounds good, but then you've got to remember how horrific the consequences of getting it wrong are, which explain why the public opinion would have shifted on it so drastically. Not only that, a lot of these nuclear energies are in the hands of private companies, and what private companies do is they cut corners to make profit. Basically, they look at the operation of something and figure out where to cut corners. And I heard this story that there's a nuclear power plant here in the UK, and they have these laws. The company set up these internal laws on how to run this nuclear reactor, and one of the things is that maintaining a reactor is very expensive, and they have these rules about when cracks start to appear in a certain part of the whole setup, that you have to replace them, and it's incredibly expensive. So when those cracks started to appear, rather than spend the money to fix them, they changed the laws to say, oh, they can actually be bigger, these cracks. And so they saved money by doing that, and that's what really concerns me with nuclear power, is that in the hands of private companies, the expensive nature of the business means that cutting corners will save you so much money, and cutting corners will increase the risk. But yeah, the problem with nuclear power in the modern age is that it doesn't do safety, but rather getting rid of waste. We will run out of space to put it eventually. I'm not so sure about that. I think our energy needs and the amount of waste you get from nuclear energy, yes, it does create very volatile material that needs to be properly sealed and looked after for thousands of years before it becomes safe again. But I believe in terms of running out of space to put it, not really. You don't want to have a lot of that waste around, but I don't think it produces enough to make large areas unsustainable or anything like that. Anyway, what I personally think is hey, I've heard this person's opinion on it, I've heard that person's opinion on it. I kind of lean towards the side of, yeah, maybe if we had continued researching and developing nuclear energy and we had handled it very safely and had not had some of the disasters we've seen, then it might really have been a great solution moving forward till we find the next thing. But I'm not terribly educated. I've just listened to other people talk about it, right? What about Chernobyl, says Itzy. That's precisely the point, is that happened, and that's one of the reasons the shift of moving away from it kind of happened, because the disasters right that. And I think it's a bit unfair to say that, oh, that's a learning step, right? But that's sort of half the point I'm making, right? Is that maybe if we continued learning from those mistakes, that might have never happened again, and it might be a really good sort of clean energy resource, right? Nuclear waste is only really dangerous for about 5 to 10 years. After that, it's just like normal household waste. We've got plenty of that. Dashing Elegance, don't know where you heard that from, but that sounds like complete nonsense, to be honest. Not 5 to 10 years, hundreds if not thousands of years for radioactive waste to be non-radioactive again. Go look up the side effects of radioactive waste. And what happened at Chernobyl. What radiation does to the body is unbelievable. Radical particles, I believe they're called, just tears everything apart. And if you haven't seen the TV series Chernobyl, that is an epic, really fantastic show. Totally worth watching. And a lot of the scenes and a lot of what you'll see visually is quite shot for shot, and it's not entirely historically accurate. There is a character in it that is actually an amalgamation of many other people, rolled into one for the sake of the TV show. But historical accuracy or not, The show's incredible, and I thought I knew a lot about Chernobyl before I watched it, but I guess I'd never like watched or read the right things about it because I wasn't aware that they filmed it all. So after I watched that and became aware, because when you get to the end of the series they show you clips of the actual footage from Chernobyl, and I was just like, this exists? I did not know this exists. I mean, of course it did, it was the 80s, but like, how have I not seen this stuff before? I thought I knew all about Chernobyl. So I went online and I was like, oh my god, some of this stuff is literally shot for shot. It's incredible. Totally great show. You should go watch Chernobyl if you have access to it. Back to the nuclear energy talk. It is actually much safer than using coal. The effects of nuclear disasters were contained in a very small area. The radiation decreases from nuclear waste at an exponential rate. So as long as it is disposed of properly, our friend was right about the 5 years. Well, I really disagree with that. I'm pretty sure I've heard it many, many times that it takes a very long time for this stuff to decay when handled properly. I could be wrong, but you know, I'm just gonna go and say that don't sound right at all from what I've heard. And you know, I'm saying what I've heard because that's all where my information comes from, right? We're all exposed to different information out there, and we can be very ignorant to the fact that other people are exposed to different sets of information. It can be very difficult. Like I said earlier when we were talking about food and stuff, like you can get one set of experts saying this and you get another saying the exact opposite. It's all very difficult to figure out sometimes. X, you're both right. It was disposed of correctly. It would take 5 to 10 years. If there's a leak or accident, the nuclear waste takes hundreds of years. I'm really sure that 5 to 10 years for correctly disposed does not sound right at all. I seem to remember, I think it was like a Tom Scott video that talked about how they have to safeguard nuclear waste and how they have to create these very special sites that will last thousands of years. And then they have to kind of create symbols or signs to tell potentially future creatures, humans, whatever it is that come along, because this society could collapse and all that we've learnt could be lost and we have to learn things again. I mean, knowledge itself is like incredibly complex and woven among our population. Like, you got a phone, we can all just pick up the phone. I'm picking up mine and looking at it, right? Imagine you then were thrown into the wild. How long to you on your own could make that phone again? You couldn't. But like, what else? How long to you could make a simpler object? Could you make a plastic bottle? Probably not. Could you make a brick? Probably got a good chance of making a brick, but then again, you probably have a lot of trial and error and maybe struggle to survive out there in the wild on your own. All this knowledge we have is all kind of like built on top of our constant progression going forward. And so if we lost all of that, things like symbols and signs themselves could actually lose all meaning. And so if you're trying to create a sign that says, don't go here, this will kill you, like, how do you convey that, was the point of the Tom Scott video. And then, like, we have a curiosity towards danger. Some people would see this thing and be like, it's an ancient tomb, I'm going to go inside and find out who's buried there. Ah, no, I've been killed by radiation poison. You know, like, how do you keep it safe? So remembering that, I'm thinking, surely the point of it is that we have to safeguard this stuff for thousands and thousands of years. And so we have to safeguard it in a way where we consider the fact that future inhabitants might not be the same as the people we have today, and they might not know the same language or symbols and signs. And therefore, how do we safeguard it from them?